Oh, I believe I am live. Hello, everyone. This is Kanica's World. Um, this is another Wednesday. You're chiming in with me, and I'm just going to get started with my title. And but since I've been on this platform, my title is Student Engagement After Membership, and we'll still keep that title going because I just think it's an important, it's a very important topic to talk about. Today is the last day um, for Women's History Month. I believe we have until the 31st. But this is my last week to be able to discuss Women's History Month. And I know around the globe, the topic of women in leadership has been coming up. So I just wanted to talk about the women's suffrage. And I believe we have an amendment that is in place. And the women, first, the 19th Amendment, and the 19th Amendment is one of the amendments that women had gained the right to be able to vote. And I want to make sure I get it right because I don't want to be wrong when I'm talking about something that's very important about women's suffrage. And the women's suffrage began the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution granted American women the right to vote. So I am right with that right to vote. But I also wanted to talk about the ratification of the amendment, and that was in August 18th of 1922. But I want to also add in 1848 the movement for women's right that launched and Seneca Falls Convention. And I wanted to speak about the convention part. So when people or groups come together and how they organize about the way that they feel and where do they take it into a place in a room and why are they having this discussion. I want to separate our women, Black women, and our white women because I believe it's very important if we don't talk about it. And the leadership. I know for in some homes that is married couples, Black couples, for my Black heritage of growing up, is that is either you leading, you letting allow the man to lead, or you or the Black woman want a right to have her say or to have something that she wants to have ownership is of. I talk about that because right now this women in leadership topic is really floating around here when if we stick to where we were and don't take anything and continuously try to move and try to fit things into spaces, we won't have a problem. If we just allow the women to have that role in their spaces, then I don't believe we will have a problem. If you got two people who have a good energy and a good chemistry to work with each other, and as a man and a woman, why not just let them have that chemistry and be able to allow them to work because it is a building block and allow those things to happen in that space. It doesn't mean that it has to be sexual. It doesn't mean it has to be a relationship. It just means they just have that kind of chemistry to work in that space. I think we forget that we're not all born under the same stars. We're not one person per se. Because if we were, then it will be no different. We will not have no creativity. We will not have nothing different about us. So when we talk about women in leadership, just let the women have what it is they need. I talk about the Black women that's in a leadership position and talk about white women that's in a leadership position and talk about the women's suffrage. I don't believe it's that hard to explain. So where say this, that white men have came when white men were wanting to be in this place of America and the British and how that came into play. Wanting to have that space of their own, what it is they needed from the kings over in Britain and bringing it back to America to be able to stand on their own and build things around. A lot of things happen. If you talk about down Pennsylvania and you talk about Baltimore, what happened? White men and rose politicians in places where it is they wanted to build and be strong. If we discuss our black women, we think about their leadership roles and what they were building and what the men of any troop, I would say, that they fought in the war and they knew what it was that they needed. So going back and combat and coming back to the states of where you are, where they were at that time to build something for their people in the church, for say. What else did our black people need? The women in leadership need to be need to have something of their own for our people. It shouldn't be a fighting battle for a woman to have a leadership role. I don't think it's a problem with that. I don't feel that it is. I believe this Constitution and the way and the year that it got ratified to add some things in those spaces is that white women's suffrage wasn't alone. That black women lined up with the women's suffrage because they wanted the things for their people in their community. We cannot talk about what white women wanted because whatever it is that they were trying to have say a thing for them to say to come out of their home or to be homemakers inside of their home doesn't mean that black women wasn't either. But when we talk about in the leadership roles in corporate offices or organizations, you got to give the women the credit if they give you this ideal, or you got to give the women the credit if they have this marketing tool that's much stronger than yours. No matter if you had the funds, no matter if you had the status to put her um on the backside, but to put you a little further is a reason that sometimes I believe corporations have their say over women in leadership because they may have they're the ones who's making the money, or they are the ones who had the stock, or their income level may be a little bit higher in some sense. But today, 2023, I don't feel we should be having a discussion to say that is in a women can't be in leadership, or whatever discussion may go. It just seems like it should be a balance somewhere, so therefore everyone can have that role or that place to say we should be able to have a place to run, and we are leaders no matter how it is said, because we do part of organization. So therefore, we may have a good idea, and someone just need to be able to give you the credit, give the woman the credit. Whatever the discussion is about women in leadership, I say just go ahead and allow the women to be able to have to say for women in leadership. Um, I am going to talk about this one person because I'm talking about women's suffrage and the women's suffrage movement right now. And the if you want to be able to follow what I'm saying, you can go to www.history.com, and it's the topics about women history and women's suffrage. So the abolitionist, I'm just going to mention name is Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and she was an abolitionist. She was a part of the human rights. She was a human rights activist, and as a state, she was one of the first leaders of the women's rights movement. And it says that she was the brains behind Anthony Brain for over 50 years to win the women's right to vote. And I wanted to point that out because that's a start of how we get into these spaces and what it means to others to be able to have women that come along to make what it is that what it is that women want to have and what it is that they're doing to have what is whole for them. And you can look her up, and as I stated, where I'm reading this information from. And I'll go to the women's suffrage movement, and they talk about the divide. As I stated that when I was talking about men that were serving in the army, and I specifically talked about our black men who served in the army that wanted to be able to come home, and I also talked about the churches, where those organizations may have begun to start. I'll talk about the Civil War. Right now in Baltimore City, research is being done and about civil wars that may have happened here and there and have to go, and we have to get people to, well, people are doing the research to understand where these things broke out. Right now, if during spring break is maybe coming up, I tell you, don't forget to stop over at Drew Hill Park where you'll see some history of some of those things are popping up. But you take a walk around, read a little bit about the historic places inside of Drew Hill Park, and then you'll be, if you didn't never know, then you'll be able to understand. I'm talking about here in Baltimore, Maryland. All right, I'll go to the 13th Amendment. And this 13th Amendment states that Women's Loyal National League to encourage Congress to pass the 13th Amendment, abolishing slavery. I'm talking about now, and I'm going to go to the 14th Amendment. In 1866, they lobbied against the 14th Amendment and the 15th Amendment, giving black men the right to vote because of the amendments didn't give the right to vote to women. Those amendments that one after another take place only because of one thing didn't happen, and you understand how if one thing didn't happen, then something else carry on. Lobbied. For me is lobbying is for me is the bidding or the have a say so, or who has the most money to say that I want this and I can buy this because I want this to apply to that. For me, lobbying is not that hard to be able to explain. It's exactly what I just said it is, and it's just as much as that. If we think about now in Baltimore City, we think about BG&E and what's happening down there in the contract that they had and a contract that was given to them to BG&E from Brandon Scott, but say that they didn't have to bid on it; they could just be able to get it. Why is that so? If you have things that are in place, and that's why these things are in place. If that's the case, why we all can't get these contracts when you walk up into this place and you don't need so many people to come onto this contract. You don't have to prove anything. You can just get it. So that's why lobbying to me is not that big of a deal. And as I said, I just wanted to talk about the women leadership roles and how it take place, and that it would not have a big discussion if we stick to what happened and why these things came about for women to be able to work in the spaces that they are in leadership roles. It's not talked about enough to say that they earned these things. They earned these right to have these. They had to fight. And that's why I think we just continue to go around in a circle because we lay back too much. for me, if I could say